Welcome back. It is the Scaling Secrets podcast, and you're really in luck because Mr. Beau Atkins is here. He is from evolvelaw.ca, and Beau Atkins is the founder of Evolve Family Law, and he's one of its lawyers there. And after Beau's own frustrating journey navigating the family justice system, Beau leveraged technology and prioritized its weaving into all firm processes, law and business alike. We're talking about things like building scalable legal services, EOS implementation, flat fee billing, and so much more. So Beau is going to shortcut our progress and tell us about some very amazing insights that might apply to you if you're in the legal profession, but even if you're just a business owner in general. I find it helps me to get out of my bubble somewhat and hear about people in other spaces. No matter who you are, you're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to learn so much cool stuff. So, Beau, glad to be speaking with you.
Thanks. It's a privilege to be here.
And the privilege goes both ways, right? It's already a lot of fun having you here. And so we introduced you somewhat, we hyped you up, but over there in Canada, what has you excited, jazzed up, energized?
Well, I'm really excited to be innovating in a profession that really hasn't seen a lot of innovation over the last 100+ years. The My journey through this, much like you discussed, was to take a business and recognize it as that. It wasn't a law firm. There was nothing really that special about my industry that couldn't take lessons from all these other different businesses. In 2019, I decided I was going to start an office that operated like a business, applying best business practices rather than looking to other law firms and sort of mirroring the things that they've been doing and I would suggest in some ways getting wrong.
I love that right off the bat because when you think about like you find your own excitement, right? And like you can imagine with this podcast you listen to past episodes, sometimes I'll interview someone and their specialty is like designing websites for like an industrial manufacturer of nuts and bolts. And then you take something that's like not exciting on its own, but you add your own storytelling, copywriting, messaging, social media, and you make it fun. And then I also like how you did this thing that we are talking about here of like looking into other industries, because if you stay in your own industry, then you're already behind, right? You're following what's going on there, and you look to other industries and then you can find some fresh ideas. And so what is there anything that comes to mind as far as when you looked at other companies that were outside the legal profession and you're like, oh my gosh, they're doing this, I have to get on board? Does anything come to mind as far as like something you learned looking outside your space?
Oh, definitely. And a couple shining examples. One, throughout law school and my university career, I put myself through it working various construction jobs, one of which was as a tile setter. And lawyers are notorious for the billable rate. Lawyers hate it, clients hate it. Nobody really likes billing by the hour, but I think it's difficult when you enter the profession to consider anything outside of that box. Now, there's been a lot of movement in the space towards flat fees and subscription billing, but I borrowed my past as a tile setter, where when a customer called and said they wanted some work done, I would have to show up with my tape measure. I was the expert. I should know how much something's going to cost. I should be able to show up, assess the job and the materials and the preparation and everything that needs to be done. I should have the foresight and expertise to give them some certainty with respect to how much it's going to cost. However, when I looked at myself as a lawyer charging an hourly rate, I wasn't applying that same standard. I was essentially offboarding all the risk onto clients who, by the way, are coming to me for certainty. That's the only reason they're coming to me, is they want some peace of mind over a legal issue they've got. And I wasn't even able to deliver that at my very first opportunity, which was with respect to their fees. So I turned that on its head and I said, okay, how can I take these legal services, identify what the problem is, take out my figurative tape measure, assess the situation, and then give them some fee certainty. And that's what we've done for the last 4.5 years, coming on 5 years, is done everything by flat fee rather than the hourly rate. And that's been so liberating for myself and our other attorneys, because they no longer have to be tethered to the scarce resource that is their time. So that's one example. Another example is with respect to payment plans. I remember at one point getting upset at a client who couldn't pay my bill. It's way long ago when I worked at another office. And yet he's set down a brand new set of car keys on the desk, sort of in a braggadocious fashion to, you just got a brand new car. Well, here I am, a 1 or 2 year lawyer. My truck just blew up. So I'm probably either borrowing a vehicle or walking or whatever. And here's someone who can't afford to pay my bill, but can afford to get into a new car. Well, same thing with that. I recognize, at first I was mad at him, then I was mad at myself, and then I recognized the opportunity I was missing in that the thing these car companies, and I mean, you look at a variety of industries, furniture industries, the notorious don't pay a cent until 2025 or 2026. Car companies that can make their service, make their product more accessible. I realized I wasn't doing that. And so that's when I worked to build a payment plan structure so that our fees could be more accessible, because not everyone, most lawyers can't afford a lawyer, let alone expecting their customers to. And when you look at data showing that 80% of people who have a legal problem aren't actually going to lawyers, that's a large segment of the population who isn't getting legal service. And so they're just either ignoring their legal problems or they're tackling them on their own, which understandably causes a tremendous amount of anxiety.
So the two amazing approaches and two things that you're doing to get these new customers, just like re-examining and saying like, what are the how are others structuring their pricing? And when you're mentioning some of this, the first thing that comes to mind is the worry about the lowering your own perception, right? Because like you think like the stereotype of a lawyer is like they're going to want this retainer, they want this hourly fee, they bill by this quarter hour. You think like I'm hesitating because I need this pile of money, right? Like as a layperson, I think any lawyer I want for any need, I need like 5 or 10,000, no matter what it is, right? If it's divorce or family law or anything, I'm just like that's what I'm expecting, just having never gone into that. And then there's this larger town one town over from me, and kind of the more like seedy bad part of town where like the streets are cracking. There's a lawyer where he has all these prices on the glass walls, right? And he's like, if you want like a will, it's this. If you want a divorce, it's this. It's like this flat rate. And so I'm thinking, whoa, it's doable. And I think it's like $1,200 or $600. I'm like, it's reasonable. But then there's that perception of like, it seems kind of like bargain basement, cheap, low rate. But maybe that's a trade-off. And like, what are your thoughts on that? Like when you say, well, here's the way it's always been done, and here's my fresh approach, but then there's the worry about like, am I kind of associating with the bottom feeder, or do you not care?
Well, I think we take a different approach. I think there is some retraining of the public that's required, because for years, over a century, you've had this hourly rate that everybody knows about, and lawyers have been insistent. They've clung to it. And so what I see, we do only family law. You see a lot of people who they seek out the highest per hour attorney as if that was a measurable of the service they're actually buying. Nobody wants an hour of my time. They want my expertise. They want problem solved, and they want peace of mind. They want to know that their legal issues are being solved. And so it's certainly something that we've had to deal with, is the perception that by charging a guaranteed or a flat fee, it might be perceived as lesser than. But I think a lot of the work has shown through that it's actually the opposite in a lot of cases. So for instance, whereas lawyers, and this is one complaint I always raise with lawyers insistent on the billable hour, is there's an inherent conflict with that. The inherent conflict is the sooner you get this problem tackled and dealt with, the less money you're going to earn. And I'm not suggesting that lawyers go out and intentionally bill time on files, although it's happened and it likely always will happen, there's less motivation to create efficiencies and improve services throughout the process. And that's something we've really tried to hone. And I know we discussed this a little bit off camera about our implementation of EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System. That has really helped us move the needle when it comes to improving the delivery of our services and making sure clients are satisfied.
Wonderful. So the price is just one aspect of it, and then the public needs somewhat of a retraining. And I like how you said earlier how it kind of it moves the risk to you, which is kind of a lot of the point when you're trying to make a sale or market your business is how do I remove the risk from the customer? So when it's this flat fee, it's like in your best interest to do a great job, but also to do it in a timely fashion. That way it's not just being dragged out. And so you're saying that with the EOS entrepreneurial operating system, you've like accomplished a lot of this. And so like tell us about this because like we've had a few guests on here and there, and EOS always seems to come up, but everyone has their own like unique take or part of it they like the best. So what is your angle as far as EOS and making your law firm the best it can be? What do you have to say about EOS?
Well, we've been pretty religious about implementing it. In fact, I'm just coming from my leadership level 10 meeting where we discussed the issues across all of the different teams within our office. Having these weekly meetings, again, religiously, we don't miss these meetings. Vacation, illness are really the only two excuses to miss a meeting. They start exactly on time, they end on time or sooner. And it gives us an opportunity to be a lot more transparent with everybody across our team, allows them a platform to voice any concerns, raise any issues, and develop all of our systems and processes and continuously improve. Another massive benefit is it allows us an opportunity to each week go back to our core values and send a reminder to everyone. What are our core values? What's our purpose? What's driving this business? Because I think it's really easy to get lost in the minutia and the practice in general and lose that North Star. It's EOS has really helped us maintain that.
Very cool. And I agree with you completely how important it is to keep on cycling back and iterate back to those core values and work on your goals and have your rocks and just kind of revisit these things that if you didn't have this structure in place, it would be easy just to get caught up in the day to day and end up drifting. And then next thing you know, you say, hey, maybe 2 or 3 years ago is when it started going bad. I wish that we would stay on focus, stayed on target. And so, as far as what Evolve Family Law provides, can you like kind of fill us in on like why would someone go to you? Like, what sort of problems do you solve? What are the services?
Well, at the end of the day, as I indicated, we're aiming to ensure at least fee certainty. So we're at the first opportunity to do so, we're providing that certainty, the peace of mind that all legal customers are ultimately seeking. From there, we carve out the journey. So we give them different options. Each option comes with different pricing. I often include the disclaimer that our prices are set in such a manner that typically we're ahead 67 to 75% of the time. We probably eat a little bit on the remainder. And so I indicate to clients, this may cost you less if you get an attorney who bills you by the hour, but it could also cost you more. This is giving you certainty with respect to that fee. So there's a lot of fee transparency. Our customers know exactly what they're going to have to pay. And the one guarantee we provide is that they will never receive an unexpected bill. We always have those discussions right out of the gate and comparing different industries. Those old enough to remember, and I'm sure they still exist, mechanics. You used to drop your vehicle off at a mechanic and just cross your fingers and hope you'd be able to afford whatever the bill ended up being at the end of the day. I think that was at a time when maybe cars were a little bit more complicated and less easy to diagnose. Now they can plug it in and they can usually diagnose it. But it was also perhaps a less competitive industry. Now you bring your vehicle there, they diagnose it, they tell you how much it's going to be. You have a reasonable expectation of what you're going to have to pay. And typically, if something else is found during that process, there's a phone call and there's a discussion. There's an authorization before work is done. And that's not something that happens on the hourly rate very frequently. More frequently, a customer goes through this whole process 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I've seen it up to 6 months later, they get a bill, and a lot of times their jaw hits the floor. So that's one thing we really aim to avoid.
Wonderful. And you should avoid that. And what comes to mind is like there's this concept of the marketplace cycles, right? And there's like the period of time when it's the Wild West. And if you set up shop, you're a mechanic, you're a lawyer, business comes in and it's no problem. But then as it becomes more competitive and commoditized, and you have to kind of adapt your strategies to that to still stay ahead. And kind of sort of like you said, you take your car in and it's straightforward enough, but if there's an unexpected issue, then they stop and they tell you about that and they say, hey, we can fix what you brought it in for, but this other thing, it's not going to be a surprise later. And so with kind of shifting gears here, and with and it seems like we're just living in like an instant gratification society anyway, right? Like you mentioned earlier about there's all these like legal subscription services, and there's the apps. That's just the mindset these days of just like, just give me the facts, let me get this problem solved quickly and move on with my life. And with lawyers, there's always the discussion of, well, like, where are the leads coming from, right? Do we run ads? Do we do the phone calls? And so I'm curious about what you've been doing to get the phone ringing and what's been working for you. Like, how has your like lead gen marketing outreach been for this law firm?
Well, as I mentioned, we're aiming for the 80% of people who don't seek lawyers for assistance in the first place. So generally speaking, the market that we're trying to hit, nobody's applying for. And I think if you examine most lawyers and law offices, they're all clamoring for the top 5-10% of net worth or income, leaving a massive gap of the market who's severely underserved. And so at this point, it's been a fairly easy market to target because nobody's targeting it. And they're an extremely easy segment to keep happy because nobody's offering the type of services that we're offering. And so by sort of not only offering those services, we started in the province of Saskatchewan in Canada, but just recently we've expanded nationally. So we now offer services all across Canada in almost every province other than Quebec and the territories. So that's been a really interesting experience, growing, learning how to enter those markets and some of the idiosyncrasies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
So you think about entering these markets. I love a challenge, and I love solving problems that are hard to solve, because then that means that my competition also has a even harder time solving the problem. And so you're saying that you're going for this, so to speak, like the blue ocean of people that they need an attorney, they need family law, but they're not maybe seeking it out or don't realize, or they're trying to go about things on their own, and that is not very well. So how do you target a population like that? Is it like a affiliate program, word of mouth? How do you find these people?
A lot of it has been word of mouth. Some of it has been targeted social media advertisements. A lot of it we've found has been the product itself. So it's become a bit of a buzzword, flat fee and subscription legal services. So just by offering those and being very transparent, even on our website, we list our prices. We're very transparent when it comes to not only what we offer, but what we charge for those offerings. And so I do think there are things we're always tweaking and trying to improve marketing. And so every part of our company could be better, and we're working to improve it.
I love it. And you mentioned earlier about values, and I know that one of my own kind of like, not as a a business, but like a personal internal value is just like, I just want to tell someone what the price is. And because it drives me crazy when I go to some website and I'm like, cool, I love everything they're saying. They have all these pages, blog posts are educating me. They say there's these plans, great. And they're like, hey, book a call with us. And I know that it's because then it's like a custom solution and maybe they can charge more. But sometimes I'm just like, where's the button? Like I'm impatient. I have to go through a chat, I have to do a phone call. Just tell me what the price is. Tell me how to get it. And so that's kind of the same way I think. Just like, what's the problem? What's the solution? If I get it, what am I paying? Simple. And so as far as what you've been doing here, you've been kind of growing and getting awareness in different ways with the like kind of saying, hey, flat fee is cool and it's superior to a lot of other things. But in your like growing the business, making sales, getting to those next step, those goals, it's never a straight line, is it? Sometimes there's problems along the way with maybe like figuring out messaging, figuring out employees, figuring out with clients. And so do you have a fun story to share with us about like a hard problem you solved and the process of overcoming it?
Oh yeah, no, I've definitely got a fun story. We started in the middle of or at the beginning of COVID, basically at the onset in May 2020. And so one of the challenges we had was trying to figure out how to function as a office when there's restrictions on distancing and people are worried and people are concerned. And one of the decisions we made starting out was to offboard our reception services. For one, it was a very difficult role because sometimes the phone's ringing 8 hours a day, sometimes it's not ringing at all. So you try to keep that person busy, but then it was just a bit of a nightmare role to actually build in an efficient manner. So we offboarded that to a virtual reception option, and there were definite hiccups with that. So in at certain points, there was one point where one of the judges of our court was asked in a deep, thick Southern accent to hold and asked about his name and his phone number and all these things that you would never, ever ask a judge or think of saying to a judge. And this was at a time when all calls happened remotely. All the court services were happening by phone. Thankfully, I personally had a good rapport with this judge. So he contacted me afterwards and said the level of, essentially to paraphrase, the level of service that he observed didn't align with what he thought my standards were. And so it gave us an opportunity to tweak that and make sure that, well, the courts now have our direct cell phone numbers because that's one person we don't want to inconvenience through the system and the setup. Two, it allowed us to refine our instructions to our virtual call center to sort of make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. If it's a judge or if it's someone from the court trying to get a hold of us, just send them right through. We've had similar experiences with customers and clients, and just trying to make sure that their experience is a very, very positive one as well. It's enabled us to essentially answer the phone 24/7 for those who are experiencing emergencies or want to speak with someone right away, even when we're all sleeping. So it's been a really interesting journey trying to map all of that out.
Wonderful. And it's this is why it's great to hear from business owners like yourself, because so many other business owners, they're afraid of just making it any kind of progress, making any kind of change, and doing the things that will enable their company to grow, such as like offloading the customer support. Some people might not even try it. And what you're saying here is like, it might be imperfect, you might make mistakes, but then what the lesson I'm getting from that is that automation doesn't mean that you're ignoring it, right? You might automate something or you might offload it to something else, but still monitor it and still check in on that so that way you can refine the system. And even when you do make a mistake, even with a judge, it's not irreversible. It's something you correct, and it's better than taking no action at all. And so it's like little things like that that just kind of help to motivate me and think like, hey, taking a risk and doing the hard stuff, it's something that we all should be pursuing in our entrepreneurial journeys. And so I want to make sure that we definitely highlight about your greatness and what you've done with Evolve Family Law in the Saskatchewan area. But since we only just met, half an hour ago, I don't necessarily know what to ask you. So is there a missing hidden question in our conversation? Is there something that you really wish that I was asking you, and can we just pretend I asked it?
Uh, I feel like when you expand the resources you're bringing in, so we've discussed expanding to looking at different businesses and different business models. When you become open to exploring that, it's like an entire world opens up. And I guess where I'm going with this is it's made me contemplate that when people come to a divorce lawyer or divorce attorney for family law services, they're not always, sometimes they've been nudged there accidentally. And sometimes that's not even what they need. And it's made me consider the entire business and the entire customer profile from a different angle. Sometimes people need to be directed into counseling. And yes, that means we're pushing prospective customers out the door. But if our mission and our purpose is to make life better, we should be pushing those people out the door. We should be pushing them to deal with addictions issues or mental health issues, or to get family counseling, or to do something. I can imagine there'd be no worse feeling than getting through a divorce or a family file and then realizing that these parties probably could have worked it out, or they reconcile afterwards. I've seen instances where that happens. Well, in that case, the divorce attorney has done harm. And again, by expanding my mind to really contemplate all of those things, it's made me even think of different disciplines outside of law, such as psychology and behavioral economics, things like that, to really dive into how we build our services and how we ultimately serve our clients and try to make their lives better.
Well, wonderful. And this is something that can be applied to any sort of industry, right? You think about what that initial customer journey is like, and you think about, well, what do you wish they knew coming in? And can they possibly, if they're not quite the client or customer you want, can they be routed somewhere else? That way you can focus on those clients that you love that can be helped and not harmed the most by what it is that you do. And so these are some amazing insights that you've been having and sharing with us as far as the EOS structure of things, as far as rethinking your pricing and rethinking your marketing. And now it's come to that point of the show where it's time to pay some bills, right? It's time to get some cheddar, so to speak, because you're here for like teaching purposes, but also for like link back SEO purposes, right? Let's be real. And so we definitely want to make sure that people know about evolvelaw.ca. So if someone here wants to know about you yourself, Mr. Beau Atkins, or about your law firm, like what type of person would they be? What kind of problem would they have? And if they say, hey, this is me exactly, where should they go? What should they do?
Anybody with family law uncertainty who wants some peace of mind, addressing change to their family, whether it be a prenuptial agreement, getting married or entering a common law relationship, or a situation where they're co-parenting with somebody who's causing some difficulty on the other side, or just separating or divorcing. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so I have a fairly active LinkedIn presence. Our office has Facebook and Instagram. Those are probably more active on those from the office perspective. And then, of course, online at, as you mentioned, evolvelaw.ca. That's where all of the information that I've been discussing can go. We've got blogs on there and all that other useful stuff.
Very cool. And you're so right. And I've only, as a layperson, I've only recently noticed this, that the legal profession online is changing. When you used to think of a lawyer, even like 10 years ago, you think of like they only are they're barely on Facebook, right? They barely have a website. You call them on the phone, that's the only way to contact. But it seems like these last few years, especially, the websites have all kinds of information. They have all kinds of like SEO, and you go there and you like you can figure out exactly what you need to kind of self-educate. They're active on social media. They're accessible on LinkedIn. It's definitely they're finally catching up, and it's turning into more of the not quite like a influencer level of accessibility, but just it's more meeting the public where they're at, where they say, hey, going to a lawyer doesn't have to be scary, doesn't have to be a last resort, even if it's something like you said, like a co-parenting or prenuptial. It's something where they can just investigate some possibilities, have a conversation, and explain their problem. If it makes sense to move forward, then perhaps there's a flat fee or like something that's less scary than those gosh darn billable hours, which seems like a model from the 1850s. And now we can have this modern day method of solving our problems. And so evolvelaw.ca, we said, is the website. And then find Beau Atkins on LinkedIn. That's first name Beau, last name Atkins. Beau Atkins from Evolve Law Family, or Evolve Family Law. That's evolvelaw.ca. And as we wrap up our conversation here, Beau, I like to end with a bang instead of a whimper and try to stump my guest a little bit and ask about a fun quote or lesson that has helped them in their journey, that can help someone else in their journey. So what comes to mind as far as a interesting, helpful, insightful quote or lesson?
Oh, an insightful quote or lesson. I was thinking as we were talking about solving problems, and I'm not sure who to credit this to, but there's a story of the CEO of the drill company who goes up to the podium and says, "What do we sell?" And he gets all these a variety of answers from around the room. Ultimately, he takes a drill, drills a hole in a piece of wood, holds up the piece of wood, and says, "This is what we're selling." And I think that's been an important lesson and quote for me to live by is think about the end goal. Think about what I'm actually trying to achieve, my team is trying to achieve, what my customers actually want, and find a way to deliver that.
I love that. You're being more forward thinking, thinking about the future. Imagine if Walt Disney said, well, we just have a park. And he's like, no, we sell dreams, we sell happiness. So that's very motivating to think about it for our own business is what are we accomplishing? How are we helping people? What kind of good are we doing into the world? And that's very helpful and inspiring. And so check out evolvelaw.ca and Beau Atkins on LinkedIn if you want to chat with him about family law, have that conversation, and you'll be glad that you did. So thank you very much, Mr. Beau Atkins from evolvelaw.ca for showing up, being raw and vulnerable and authentic and sharing with us some very helpful lessons. I really appreciate you.
Awesome. Thanks. You too, Robert.